We live, maybe.
Did you say maybe?
I meant to say baby, but I slipped,
but you
and it was like a maybe.
And you made eye contact, and the thought of saying baby while making eye contact like messed with your head, so you said maybe.
But it was a perfect Freudian slip because it expressed my fundamental sense of self-doubt. Like, we live, maybe. Are we?
Welcome to the Office Hours Podcast. This is TK Coleman and Isaac Morehouse. We're like the Geek Squad for your professional development. Got a job you're trying to get, a work-related issue you're trying to resolve, a project you're trying to complete, an obstacle that's holding you up? Well, you're in the right place. You bring the problem, we bring the nuts and bolts. This is where you get philosophical insight and actionable advice on how to take charge of your life and career.
So what are we going to talk about today? Oh, by the way, I wear the same clothes every time we record. That way people can't tell if we're doing one marathon session or multiple. So if you're watching on video.
Hey, man.
What do we got?
Last time, before we left, you were like, I got a question I want to ask you. And you're like, it's a personal question. I'm going to take it right to you. I was like, all right. And you were like, I want to wait. I want to wait for the episode. I want to wait till we're on camera. So what was that?
I don't know if I remember exactly what it was, because the question that I want to ask you, I don't think it's all that personal, but I guess I'll ask it. But I don't know if it's that one.
Yeah, and I got a personal one for you as soon as we done. Yeah.
No, so I was just thinking about this because you do a lot of speaking gigs.
Yeah.
And you recently did one. Actually, I don't even remember. You do so many of them, but I was just thinking. I was curious because I haven't asked you this in a while. How do you, everything about the process, how do you choose when you're going to do a speaking gig? Because I know you are at a point where you've got to say no to some stuff. Mm-hmm. How do you choose when you're going to do it? Do you get excited? Do you get up sort of for a speaking gig? Or is it just sort of like, yeah, I got this down pat, and you just sort of go in? How do you prepare? Do you prepare? Like, do you go into each audience with a specific goal and a set of notes, or do you just go in and feel it out? I'm curious where you're at with that, because over the years it's kind of changed your relationship to speaking, and now it's like, this is just like reps. They just come all the time. You're doing them, so it's not quite as much of a new thing. It's not, and I'm wondering, like, what kind of groove have you settled into with the whole process?
Man, this has been such a crazy year of growth for me in that, where I've had to experiment with so many different ways. So, I come from the background where spontaneity equals spirituality, and so you don't prepare, right? So you get up there and you talk.
You have notes? I guess you're not hearing from God.
Yeah, exactly. So I would just get up there and just talk, and I didn't even give myself permission to repeat anything. And we talked about that, how I had to get to a point where I was comfortable just like repeating myself and not forcing
like giving the same talk multiple times at different venues, you mean?
Yeah, or repeating a story that works well to, convey a point or something. Well, I've had to experiment with the total opposite extreme. So I'm creating a series of videos with Fee called Revolution of One. And they're like these 5 to 10 minute sermonettes where I focus on a theme for each video. And because I'm working with a media crew and we've got to make decisions about what's going to be the environment, how are we going to do the blocking for it, I have to know everything I'm going to say. And so I have to write it all out. And when I write it all out, Sean Malone will hold me to it. He's like, wait, nope. You said that line differently. I need it like this.
Why did I hear Carl Malone? Said that. So wait, so you're actually, like, are you memorizing the whole speeches now?
I need to.
Are you serious?
Yeah, because, well, no,
not
like live speeches. Not like live speeches.
Oh,
like,
okay.
If I go give a talk somewhere, I'm not going to write a speech and memorize it. But for these videos, it's kind of forced me to think about speaking in a way that's the complete opposite of how I've been doing it most of my life. And what's been cool about that is it kind of helps me see that, preparation isn't a bad thing. that preparation can actually be fun. That there's something cool about knowing where you're going. So I've kind of found this hybrid approach for how I prepare for a talk. And that is, first I start with a question. And you and I have talked about this for years. And that is, how do I want my audience to feel? Right? Do I want them to be angry about something? Do I want them to feel hope? Do I want them to feel really like, irritated, whatever it is. What do I want my audience to feel? I get clear with that because I believe, along with Zig Ziglar, that sales is a transference of feeling. And when you're speaking, you're selling ideas, and you want to internalize the feeling that you want your audience to have. Then the second thing is, what do I want my audience to do? When they leave this event, what do I want them to go do? And I get clear on those questions. And then I usually create an outline. I don't like to box myself in too much. I like to leave a lot of room for spontaneity still, but I write an outline. I want to, at the opening of my talk, I want to get my audience to this destination. I want to use the body of my talk to hammer down this conviction. And then at the end of my talk, I want to drive it home with this point. Now, spontaneously, I may use a different story or a different analogy. I still like to be pretty impromptu, but I go in there having that general outline for where I want to take the audience. And that has evolved over time.
How do you decide what talks to say yes to? Or like what's a talk that you'll turn down, or what's required for you to say yes?
Yep. So now it's all boiled down to my work with Praxis and my work with Fee. I pretty much say no to everything that doesn't directly benefit those initiatives. But if it helps the Praxis mission, or if it helps the Fee mission, I'm saying yes to it, even if I experience a little stress, even if I have a busy month. If it's not directly related to those things, then it's really got to be something that makes me really excited, and I feel like it's got to be something on my bucket list. Right. So the trip to Africa that I took, it was an example like that. It wasn't related to Praxis or Fee.
I know you did that one entirely so that for the rest of your life you would never have to travel internationally again. So you can be like, hey, I've done it, guys. Leave me alone. Leave me alone. Yep, I don't need the magic of travel.
Yes. My bucket list didn't say go to Africa. It said take away people's arguments for why I need to travel internationally. And I crossed that off. We're done. I've been to Europe, been to Africa. That's it.
What about we should do like an anti-travel podcast. I like travel, but not to the same level as a lot of people.
But you know what? I've kind of relaxed on it a little bit, because when I think about it, that's all I did in my 20s. I did a ton of traveling, and I take for granted the degree to which traveling has really had a positive impact on me, and I've kind of become, in relation to that topic, sort of like the grumpy old man who forgot what it was like at that stage of his life. When I was in my 20s, I loved traveling.
I'm disappointed to hear you say that.
Yeah,
it ruins the narrative. I love the idea that you're like the one person in the world who's like, especially people in the kind of self-betterment environment, to be like, no, man, travel's terrible. That would have been a lot funnier.
Hey, well, I'm still like the only person in the world that has never dreamt of going to Europe. Like, it just means nothing to me. I have no desire to go to Rome or France.
Like I would definitely do it if it was a convenient trip and it would be fun and I would go see some stuff. But yeah, I'm kind of
similar. And you pay me a lot for it.
Because I feel like Europe is like a giant museum, and I don't like museums as much as I like.
This is like what you say at college. It's like the Queen of England.
Exactly. I don't like museums as much as I like new stuff. So I always want to go where things are like, where growth and progress are on the cutting edge, where things are like, and Europe, it's like all the things it's famous for are, hey, remember when this used to be great and amazing? Now, it's not like Europe is totally dead, but it's way more about appreciating stuff that happened a long time ago. Like, remember when we used to be the center of the world? It's like, well, that's less interesting to me than going somewhere that is right now pushing the boundaries. New skyscrapers are going up. New technologies are being invented. Like, I like that so much more.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm not very nostalgic.
And hey, man, I love America, dude. I love America.
Are you saying that just so we have a soundbite of you saying, I love America, that you can use in case you get in trouble later for, criticizing the police or something?
Yeah. I love me some America. Listen, man, this country has a lot of beautiful places, a lot of beautiful people, and we just need to come together. And America is a wonderful place.
I love my wife and children. I love my country.
No, I really mean it, man. And I'm happy with a book, but we've spent entire episodes of me talking about that. So.
Yeah, all right.
So that was your question? That was it? That was the personal?
I guess so. I can't remember.
I got one from you, man. I got one for you.
Okay.
You know the old statement, I think it's like there are two inevitabilities, death and taxes.
Mm-hmm.
I want to add a third to that, and that is being disliked. And I had a conversation with a friend about this recently, and the topic was moments when you feel like you did right by someone else and they still don't like you, or maybe they don't give you the credit, or they don't acknowledge you. And that's one of those areas of life where it's kind of easy to get your feelings hurt, you know? And I don't think I've ever seen you get your feelings hurt over something like that. So my question to you is, do you feel like you have ever been disliked for reasons that may have been unfair to you, felt unfair to you? And if so, has that ever hurt your feelings before? Has it ever gotten in your head before? And if not, why not? If so, how have you dealt with that?
Wow, that is a very hard question. I don't think I have ever done any real self-reflection about that. Okay, let me take that first part first. Has anyone ever not liked me for something where I thought it was like unfair?
Not like, yeah, this is my belief and I'm proud of it. I don't care if you don't like me.
Like, I know people have disliked me, or I've rubbed them the wrong way at various points. But I don't know that I've ever seen it as unfair, because like there are things about me that are unlikable. So like I remember I started working at a new place, and you know, I'm all chipper and loud and whistling and hi everybody type of person. And sometimes introverted people, or people who are more discriminating or intense or whatever, will assume that that's phony, that I'm like putting on a show and I'm trying to be smooth and whatever and salesman-y. And I've had people dislike me on first impression because I'm like, hey, how's it going? And introduce myself and just be like disgusted by how sunny I am, right? I think Michael Malice was like the first time I met him, he was like that. I've had that a couple times, but I've never felt that was unfair, because I get it. I totally get it. And I actually kind of like it. I love it when I enter a room and all the people that are easy to win over by smiling and interacting with them, they're cool. But the people who are like, who's this goofball trying to smile and say hi and make everybody like him? I love that challenge. That kind of excites me. Like, okay, you think I'm one thing, and I kind of like letting you think that while I make this game to slowly show you that I'm something else as well. Yeah. So I don't know. I guess I don't know that I can think off the top of my head times where I've been unfairly disliked. There's plenty of reasons to dislike me, and I understand that happens.
Hey, I like that though, because you're basically saying you don't ever feel entitled to being liked. Because the notion that it's unfair is kind of like, oh, but my life would be so much better off if you liked me, or you ought to like me.
Yeah, I don't feel entitled at all. Like, why would someone just like me for no reason? Now, like, you know, sometimes you'll encounter somebody who's just rude to you for no reason whatsoever. I mean, you know, whatever, you're driving through a parking garage and the attendant is just really rude. Again, I for some reason, those are like that's an area where I excel. I know, that's why I'm asking you. I've never seen that get in your head. I love when I worked at the grocery store and you have a customer that's really rude. Like, something about that gets me excited. Like, it's an opportunity to try to see if I can crack this person a little bit. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I guess that's not really something that I struggle with very much. At least I'm sure there's a scenario that I'm not thinking of where maybe I do, but I can't think of it right now.
Man, that has always been like a challenging one for me. I remember my first job, I worked at a sporting goods store in the neighborhood I grew up in. And I remember I worked at the register, and there was a father and his son in the store. And the kid wanders away from his father. He comes up to the register, and he like has $1, and he's asking me if we sell candy. And I'm like, no, we don't sell candy. It's a sporting goods store.
You were like, don't I wish?
Right? And so he leaves. And then the father comes back.
Like, psst, hey, but I got some Skittles in the back. I'll sell you.
Hey, man, I got some Skittles and Snickers in my locker. I'll be right back, homie. But so the father comes back a few minutes later, and he's like, you took my son's money. And I'm confused. I'm like, wait, huh? What? And he says, I gave my son $1 to buy some candy, and you took it. And I'm like, dude, I'm so confused. I have no idea what you're talking about. Like, why would I want to steal your son's $1? I'm here at the register. I got people in line. And so he like started to yell, and I like called my manager over, and my manager dealt with the situation. Now, being accused of taking this kid's $1 is just like a whatever stupid thing. And this was like years ago. But that scenario bothered me for like a week. I like felt so hurt that this guy would think that I would do that and that I didn't. That just felt so unfair. And that's one of the first things I noticed about you, man. Like, you just never have seemed at any point in your life to care about what people think of you in a way that can be self-defeating or distracting to the work that you need to do.
Maybe that might be a sign of sociopathy. I don't know. I like myself so much that I don't need anyone. No, I'm trying to think. I would say probably the closest is with my kids. And you've said this before, like my kids are my kryptonite, right? Like,
yeah.
You know, especially my oldest son. He's very independent as well. And like, I want him to like me. And as he becomes a teenager, your kids don't like you a lot, right? They are annoyed by you, even if it's just stupid little stuff like, oh, can you just leave me alone? And you're like, I didn't do anything. You know, because I remember I did that when I was a teenager to my mom. I was just needlessly rude to her about stuff like, could you stop singing? Or like, could you stop breathing? Like everything she did was annoying and I just wanted to be left alone. So when my son does stuff like that, that's probably the most where I'm like, but I'm cool. Like, I'm a cool dad, right? Like, how come you won't like me? You know? That's probably the closest, but.
Hey, by the way, when you talked about how people look at you when you walk in all chipper and happy, they're just like, who's this goofy guy? So today, I had a Zoom call with Sarah, who is director of operations, our awesome team member. And we get on the call, and I go, hey, what's up? And she goes, what's up? And I'm like all smiley and goofy. And I go, how's it going? And she goes, good. And I said, you seem a little low energy. Is everything okay? And she goes, I'm not going to be super happy all the time. And she was just real matter of fact about it. Like, she wasn't even mad about anything. It was just like, hey, as a factual statement, just so you know going forward, I'm not always going to be in an emotional state of exuberance. And I was just like so confused. And I'm like, okay.
I've had that conversation with Chuck Grimmett, who works with us on the crash team. He's an absolutely awesome guy. Shout out, Chuck. So many times we'll jump on Zoom and I'll be like, hey, you good, man? He'll be like, yep. And I'm like, all right. And he's even told me before, like, sometimes I like forget to smile and I like forget that other people feel weird if you don't smile sometimes. So like Amanda, his wife, will remind him, you know, smile a little bit more or whatever. He's like, it doesn't mean anything's wrong, but like, why would I, like, you need a reason to be sad and you need a reason to be happy. Why would I just be happy? And I'm like, isn't happiness just a default state?
And that's actually the most logical conclusion, right?
Right.
Like, I'm the illogical one thinking that, wait, is something wrong? You know,
right. Chuck's really should be like, hey, Isaac, why are you happy? You know, instead of me being like, hey, why aren't you smiling?
Hey, so I saw this tweet the other day that reminded me of a video you shared. I'm going to post. I'm going to talk about it in a second. But the tweet was by Jeffrey Campbell, and he said this: "You'll never be paid what you're worth. You'll only be paid exactly what it costs to replace you." That reminds me of a video you recorded for Praxis participants called "A Word About Pay," and we've been sharing that. And I'll make sure we share that where we share this podcast. But you made some similar points about that. I love to hear you kind of expound on what made you decide to write a video breaking down what you do and don't get paid for. And what would you say is the biggest myth you've observed on that causes frustration with people about what they get paid?
Oh man. Yeah. I think the reason I made the video, and that was one of those videos where like, I just had something in me. I was in the moment and I just like whipped it up because I was addressing something that was repeatedly irritating me. And it just like came out with just the right, like, okay, I said it. I said the thing that needed to be said. I think it was in response to, we had a lot of Praxis participants that get into their apprenticeships and they're real young. For their age, they're incredibly high achievers, right? I mean, 18, 19, 20, doing the things that they're doing, building this portfolio, getting jobs at startups. So everywhere they go, people are like, oh my gosh, you're so impressive compared to your peer group. And it's true. And then when they go and let's say they get a full-time offer or they want to, you know, ask for a raise or something, they feel personally offended that they don't get an amount of pay that they feel like they should get because they're thinking about their pay as a marker of their worth as an individual human being in the world. And that's not what it is at all. And then the second fallacy is like, okay, fine, I get that it's not about how valuable I am as a person and how much, like, yes, compared to other 18-year-olds, I'm incredibly valuable. But that doesn't necessarily mean that I'm, creating a ton of value for this company. But then others will be like, I brought in $60,000 worth of sales. Or I brought in $100,000 worth of sales. And thinking that value creation means only what you generated for the company, and assuming that it's like done in a vacuum. And it's not. It's always done in an infrastructure. You generated sales because there was a product to sell, because there was a process of selling it, because there was a whole system of once you handed it off, somebody delivered the product. And the fact that all that sales was generated, it wasn't just that you materialized it out of thin air. It's that you were part of the process, and you, like any part of the process, can be replaced. And so the fact that you brought in $60,000 in sales doesn't necessarily mean you're worth $50,000 in pay. If I'm capable of going and getting somebody for $30,000 who will bring in that same $60,000 in
Man,
pay.
why does that word replaced hurt so much, man? Like, did Hollywood do that to me with the movies? Like, when you said you can be replaced, that just hit me hard.
Well, it's not, I guess, maybe it isn't the best word, because employers are not actually sitting there thinking about it that way. They're not looking at employees as these interchangeable widgets that they're just dying to replace. There's nothing worse than hiring and firing and hiring people. So, like, even if theoretically at any given time, there's probably someone somewhere on the market who can do everybody's job at any given company slightly better or for slightly less money, but the process of finding them and all that stuff is terrible. So employers are not like waiting and hoping that happens. But if you come to them without recognizing your replacement costs, without recognizing the next best alternative available to that company, you will come really out of whack. And you'll come and be like, hey, I did this, 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 and this. And, therefore, and it created this much in revenue, therefore I deserve this much in pay. And if the person's like, yes, those are all good things, but those are all the exact same things that anybody making $40,000 would be able to do. That's good, but I can get somebody else to do it too for the same level. So you can't be way out of whack with that. You just have to understand that you're operating in a marketplace, and this is not a disempowering thing. This is also an empowering thing, because oftentimes, the next best replacement for what you do would be somebody that would require way more money than you're getting paid. And that can be an insight that helps you understand that you're worth more than you're getting paid and ask for a raise and be effective sometimes, right? Because when an employer thinks about, if somebody came to me and said, double my pay, my first thought would not be get out of here. My first thought would be, let me think for a second. What would that be? What would that cost? Okay. If I said no and they quit, what would I have to pay to get somebody to replace them? And if the only next best replacement would cost double or even close to it, I'd say, all right, you're right. I'll double your pay because I can't replace you for less than that.
Yeah.
So it's really just understanding a business they have to, or they won't survive to their competitors. They have to always be thinking about how can I get the most return for the least input, so I can either deliver lower prices to customers and stay competitive, or have higher margins and stay competitive, or whatever it is. So you've got to understand it's not about what you do in the raw, in the abstract. It's about the relevant comparison.
So would you say then that a good career building strategy would be to look for opportunities to make it more costly for people to replace you?
Yes, make yourself irreplaceable. And that often takes the form of not only excelling at a given thing within a role, that has a ceiling at some point where, like, if you're the absolute dominant, salesperson or operations person, whatever, yes, it can be harder to replace you there. But what's even more irreplaceable is if you combine that with some other value, some other skill set, and then you have an intersection. So you're like, hey, I am the absolutely awesome salesperson, but I also learned how to design graphics, and I make graphics for the marketing team all the time as well.
Hey,
and now you're getting this crossover, this utility,
Yeah, I've heard you use Cameron as an example of this before. We've already talked about Sarah and Chuck, but break that down.
break Cameron down.
Yeah. Cameron deserves a shout out. But I've heard you say before that you think he's a great example of this, right?
Yeah, he is a great example because Cameron is, and this is not an insult at all, because I'm the same way, and I think this is a very complimentary thing for the type of person he is not the best at any one of these skill areas that he's in. Like, he's not the absolute master at project management or the absolute master at using a sales database or whatever, but he's so good at so many things that, like, he's such a utility player. If he's the type of person where if he were to say I'm leaving, it would take me like several hours to even figure out what all I need to replace. Do you see what I'm saying? Because he's so instrumental in so many areas, which is why he's a COO. He's in this sort of overall, operations of what's going on in the company, and he can be deployed to wherever the need is the greatest at any given time. And whatever department or area or problem he goes to, he's going to make it better in some way and in ways that I can't even fully define. And that's kind of this nexus of skills he's put together. And one of those skills, frankly, is understanding and knowing how to work with me really well. And that's really hard to replace, right? Like, so if the people you work with, if you take the time to learn their work habits and how they do things and do things that make their life easier, that makes you really hard to replace. Because it's like, well, but like nobody understands me like Cameron. This is going to be really hard. If you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
all right. So trigger warning for basketball analogy. This was a big thing with Scottie Pippen, right? The Bulls brought in a lot of players that were arguably at that time better than him, but they just couldn't get along with Jordan. And Scottie was just capable of reading him really well and playing along with him really well. And so they developed and grew together.
It's like a Chris Paul is a good analogy too. Like, any star you put Chris Paul with, he's going to make that star better.
Yeah.
And Cameron, I remember it would be like TK, you are like a star in certain things. And if I'm
like Harden, I don't like to play defense.
And if you're working on something and I like throw Cameron at the problem with you and say, Cameron, work with this on TK, I know you would immediately get excited and be like, oh man, I got Chris Paul dishing me dimes now. I'm gonna be open all the time, right? Yeah. He will set you up to do a better job at what you're already good at.
Yeah. So that brings up the distinction we talk about in Praxis a lot: being hireable versus being indispensable. Being hireable is creating the excitement in people that makes them say, wow, I want to work with this person. But being indispensable is creating the excitement when you're actually working with them that makes them say, I want to hold on to you and I want to assign additional responsibilities to you. And this actually segues into that book you're reading, that it's something like, what got you here isn't good enough to get you to the next step.
Yeah, what got you here won't get you there.
Yeah. It's like, it takes one set of skills to get your foot in the door, but that's not enough. If you want to own the room, if you want to move up the ladder, it takes an entirely different set of skills. And it's important to remember, like, that you always got to be working on your game, because it's not just enough to land the opportunity.